Okay, folks, happy Saturday morning. What I have here is I wanted to save you a little bit of money and tell you some of the things that I do. Now, I happen to like Prego, and Prego has a good solid jar and it's glass. And I also happen to like Welch's jelly. And whenever I get Welch's jelly, I always get the glass jar. So when you go to the store and you buy something and you're buying goods off the shelf, anytime you can get a glass jar, those are reusable with the lids that are on them. Once you sterilize them, you can store your dry goods in them, such as salt, sugar, rice, beans. This saves you money on canning jars because your actual canning jars, you want to save your canning jars for using in your pressure canner or your water bath canner. Okay, so a good way to save money is to reuse jars that you've bought from the grocery store. Now, of course, you're going to wash them really well, and then you're going to sterilize them. Now, you can sterilize them several different ways. There's several videos online that you can look that up. You can put them in the oven. You can put them in boiling water. It just all depends on what you're going to store in them. If you're storing food-grade stuff in them, you definitely want to sterilize them. If you're storing nuts and bolts, things of this nature, they just need to have a good wash and then sterilize that way. If you're storing salt, a good wash, let them dry really well, and the salt will actually sterilize the inside of the jar, especially pink Himalayan salt. Now, another thing I do is I get the bouillon cubes, and this is glass, and I reuse these for spices. So I have spices all over my kitchen, right? So I wash these out and I reuse it for my dried spices. I also reuse old spice jars for my spices. Again, I'm going to wash them out really good. I'm going to let them dry, and then I reuse them. Now, one thing that people don't think about is your peanut butter jars. You see here, I've got a peanut butter jar that I store miscellaneous nuts, bolts, nails, fence ties in peanut butter jars. But as you see, if it gets hot, like this was stored in the shed, if it gets hot, it will tend to melt a little bit. So just be aware of that. They can melt from heat. So that's what I had for you today. I wanted to kind of go over that because a lot of people that I've heard online are complaining about how high the canning jars are, and a little bit of frugality will go a long way, right? And as you can see, this is pretty dirty on top because it's just been stored in the cabinet. When you wash these jars out, make sure you also wash and sterilize the lids, okay? Because these jars will not take a canning lid. They are smaller at the top than a normal canning lid. So you want to make sure you keep the lids for whichever jar that you're saving. And I'm trying to save y'all some money because when you go to the store and you look at quart jars or pint jars, they're $11, $12 a case. And a lot of times if you have a big family, you don't have a lot of extra money for that. And those are the cheap jars. I mean, actual mason jars, I've seen them up where I live at. I've seen them for quart jars all the way up to $75 a case. So you want to be aware of how much money you're spending on canning. And a lot of times, if you just take a few minutes to wash out and sterilize your jars, you can reuse them for a lot of things that you want to store. I mean, you can store nails, screws. You can store little things that little beads from your artwork. I use these for beads. Okay, it just, you need to think outside the box, right? So many people take these jars, they use them once and they throw them away, and they are reusable. Okay, so anytime you go to buy something, always try and get a good solid glass jar, because a good solid glass jar will serve you for years. And it doesn't take long, just buying your normal things and just making that choice. Instead of buying the plastic jar, you buy the glass jar. And it might be 5 or 6 cents more for the glass jar, but in the end, once you wash it out and you sterilize it, it'll last you for years. And that's how a lot of my dry goods are stored, is in these old glass jars, because I happen to like spaghetti, and I happen to like salsa, and they come in various size jars. And so I store my sugar, my rice, my beans, my black beans, all of this, because when you buy your rice, you're gonna buy it in bulk. So, when I buy rice, I'm going to buy a 25-pound bag of rice. I'm going to stick it in the freezer for a week to kill any possible bugs that are in the rice, because trust me, every dry good that you get out of the store is going to have some kind of bugs in it. And so you want to store it in the freezer for a week before you use it. Okay? So I store my rice in the freezer for a week. Then I take it out and I separate it into jars for either single serving jars, or family size serving jars, or gallon jars. I even have gallon jars here. So it all depends on what size of your family is. And one of the easiest steps to do is to reuse what you're already buying. Now, obviously, if you're buying cans, you can't reuse them for much, except for maybe making little heaters out of them, or maybe making candles with them. But the cans, you're not going to be able to. They have less use than the glass jars. And one tip I will tell you with pickle jars, especially anything that's pickled, like pickles, pig feet, pickles, anything of that nature, you definitely want to boil those jars after you wash them. And the reason you want to boil them is a lot of times that pickle juice will get inside the glass. And so anything you put into that jar is going to get the flavor of pickles. This is something I learned by mistake. So you definitely want to boil those jars and clean them very well. I literally wash my pickle jars, boil them, let them come back to room temperature, wash them again, and then sterilize them before I reuse them, because I don't want that pickle taste in anything else that I'm making in my jars, right? I don't want that in any of my food. So that's some of my tips for this week. I hope that helps you a little bit, and I hope that it gives you an idea of how to separate out your dry goods when you buy them, because honestly, you know, most people are not going to cook 5 pounds of pinto beans at one time. Okay, now if you have a big family, you might. But if you're like me and you're single, you're not going to cook up 5 pounds of pinto beans at one time. So how do you store it? Right? So you want to separate it out into serving sizes, so that they're easy to grab right off the shelf. It's right there, and you're good to go. So I hope this helps somebody. And my dog is chewing on his foots. Duke, what you doing? Are you chewing on your foots? Yeah. You on your couch? Yeah. That's my buddy right there. That's my buddy right there. And there is nothing wrong with my dog, by the way. My dog goes to the vet quite regularly. He is 10 years old. He weighs 42 pounds. And the vet, at the last time that we saw him last month when he got his shots, the vet says that he has the teeth of a 3-year-old dog. So, yeah, my dog is very well cared for, okay, for anybody who is concerned about my dog. Now, I'm gonna speak a little bit about dogs. Now, my dog, as you saw in one of my videos, is small dog aggressive. Okay? The reason he's small dog aggressive is you can't tell. I mean, he looks like a small yellow lab. Okay? He looks like a small yellow lab. And when you look at him, you can't tell that he's not a small yellow lab. However, if you notice this one ear that folds down, this is a sign that he has Carolina dog. Now, Carolina dog, for all of y'all who don't know, please go Google it. It is an actual dingo that is wild here in North Carolina. Okay? And as you see, his leg is not broke. It's just a growth on his elbow. That's normal for his age. Okay? And he moves slow, as you could tell, because, you know, he is 10 years old. Now, my dog has Carolina dog, okay, and yellow lab, and Jack Russell. So I have all three of those. And how did you do that? I got to fix this halter. I have all three of those in this dog, and so he shows the signs of all three of those. I mean, you have to know your animals. Like Patera said, you know, she went and did a DNA test, okay? I happen to know that my dog has Carolina dog in him because when I got him from the pound, he was scheduled to be put down. And they had already put his mama down, who was completely wild, and his siblings down. And I had to get cleared in order to have him. Okay, I had to go through a background check. I had to sign 25 pages of paperwork on him because he does have Carolina dog in him. And that is considered a wild dog. How did you do that? Come here. Come. How did you do that to your halter? See, I got to fix this halter. But, I don't know how you did that. How did you do that, silly butt? See? Can we fix it? All right, we fixed it. There we go. Silly butt. I don't know how you did that, but we fixed it. So you have to be aware of the traits of your animals, right? So he has a tendency, if it's something smaller than him, he has a tendency to go after it, okay? Squirrels do not stand a chance in my backyard. This dog will climb a fence to try and get at a squirrel. So I have to be aware of that. And when I build my fences, I have to try and make it to the point where he can't climb the fence. So that's just a trait of my dog. Other dogs have different traits. Now, the good thing is he's very loyal because he's got the yellow lab in him. But he's very fast because he has a Jack Russell in him. And so these are traits of the dog, okay? So you want to be aware of that whenever you go to buy an animal or pick up an animal from the shelter. I really recommend that you go to the shelter first and look at the animals there if you can, if you're looking at getting an animal, because our shelters right now are overwhelmed with people giving up their pets because they're losing their places. And so a lot of times these are very good pets. Now, of course, you want to go to a good shelter. You don't want to go to a shelter which has questionable policies, okay? But you need to be aware of that whenever you get an animal, of the background, because every dog out there has specific traits to that dog, okay? A Dachshund likes to dig, right? If you're in a yard and you don't want a digger, then you need to look at a dog that's not going to dig, okay? Dachshunds will definitely dig. I've had a Dachshund before. I will tell you, they will definitely dig, okay? Cats tend to have their own personalities, and by breed, they have specific issues medically that can come up, okay? Chickens, same way. If you're going to buy a chicken, you want to look at what kind of breed of chicken do you want to get. Do you want a chicken that's going to lay a lot of eggs, or do you want a chicken who is going to go Brody on you, which means they're going to sit on the eggs, or do you want a chicken that's going to lay colored eggs? Okay. Funniest story that I ever heard was I gave a dozen eggs to one of my coworkers. He took it home, and his wife sat there and kept scrubbing the eggs, because my eggs are, I have two chickens that lay colored eggs, and I have one chicken that lays an almost pink colored egg, and two other chickens that lay brown eggs. Well, she had always bought her eggs in the store, and so had never seen a green, blue, or pink egg. And so when she got these, she was trying to scrub the eggs to get the coloring off. Just so you know, folks, chickens do lay different colored eggs, okay? If you didn't know that, now you do. All right, so I hope this helped you. And I know I'm kind of rambling, but always look at, whenever you go to buy an animal, the animal might look cute when it's a little puppy, but when you buy an animal, you literally become responsible for that animal for life. So this is not a simple, oh, the kids want a puppy. No. Okay? If you buy an animal, you need to take responsibility for that animal. This is a kid that's going to live in your house permanently for life. And you have to realize that there does come a time when you're going to either have to make the decision to put that animal down, okay, or allow that animal to die in your house with dignity, and then you have to decide, are we going to cremate them? Are we going to bury them? You have to make that decision. So you need to think about not the type of breed of animal that you're buying and how big the adult will be. Okay? Because I'm going to tell you, little pit bulls look cute when they're little, but they can grow up to be very big. Same thing with a Great Dane. A Great Dane, as a puppy, is a gorgeous dog, okay? But you got to realize that that dog is going to get up to 150 pounds and maybe 3-4 feet tall at the shoulder. And they're going to eat quite a bit of food because of their size. and they're not going to live as long as some of the smaller dogs. Some of the smaller dogs can live. I had a dog that lived 25 years. Okay, so some of the smaller dogs can live quite a long time. Some of the bigger dogs only have a 5 to 10 year lifespan. So you want to look at that also, and you want to make sure before you get an animal. Please research the animal. Please know the traits of that animal, and please be aware that you are really their sole companion, unless you happen to get another dog to go with the dog. You really are their sole companion, and you are now responsible for that animal, for the health of that animal, for the food that that animal gets, for the water that animal gets. Taking a dog and putting him out on a chain because your kids are tired of messing with him, and leaving him outside in the cold and the wet is absolutely a horrific decision. You might as well put a bullet in the dog. Yes, I said that. Okay? Be aware, if you get an animal, you are responsible for that animal, and you are responsible for, in certain counties, in my county particular, you have to pay for a dog license, and you have to prove that they are up to date on the various shots that they are required for that county. Some counties only require rabies. Other counties require rabies and distemper and some other. My county requires 4 shots every year. So you have to be aware of that, and you have to take into consideration the cost of feeding, housing, and vet bills whenever you get an animal. And I'm saying that because I love animals, and I've just seen horrific images of animals that have been abused, and it's just no call for that, right? So with that, I hope my tips on the jars helps you out, and I'm going to let you go. Bicycle!